Okay, so Walt, great to have you back on the show. Lots to talk about, so let's just jump right in.
Let's
Now,
do
I know
it.
that you've been, yeah, let's do it is right. I know that you've been following what's going on, happening on these college campuses in regards to the Palestinian protests. Do me a favor, explain to my audience why you think that so many schools have suddenly turned into powder kegs of Middle Eastern conflict.
Why are they powder kegs? Listen, but this is college campuses. This is where protests happen. And people are like, oh, why are people protesting at universities? It's a university. Protests are meant to be disruptive. They're meant to, shake things up. When people were protesting for Black Lives Matter, it was the same reaction of like, oh, not here. You can protest, just not here, just over there. As long as people are not, being violent towards other people, then, it's fine. It's acceptable.
Well, they are. That's the whole thing. It's getting to the point where it's so bad. As an example, Columbia has now canceled school for the rest of the year,
well,
and they're going
the
back to the
faculty
COVID
walked out.
bullshit.
You had
No,
the
that's not
faculty.
true. No,
The
that's not
faculty
true.
walked out as well.
No, there was one Jewish faculty member who they shut off his pass. He was going to school. They shut it down. I'll tell you, I was watching MSNBC this morning, and Donnie Deutsch was talking about it, and he said something that really rings true, and unfortunately, it rings home for Jewish Americans. First and foremost, when they were punching Asian people in the face, just simply for shits and giggles. You didn't see people protesting. And what Donnie said is, I would like for somebody to go and to ask these young students. And I agree with you, protest is good. But ask them, what are you protesting?
And protest. Well, listen, you and I aren't going to. We're not going to agree on whether
I don't want us to agree. But my question
is, there's a genocide
that
happening. I think it's a genocide. You might disagree, and the protest is to stop, all this, killing of, people. A lot of people are dead, and they don't need to be. This is not, these aren't enemy combatants, and this is a collective punishment at this point. And it doesn't.
I would be right.
It doesn't seem about. Listen, you could talk about getting hostages back, and that's. Hostages are not enemy combatants. They don't deserve to be, detained, imprisoned, and subject to all of that. At this point, it does not seem to be centered around getting hostages back. We could have a whole discussion on that.
I was going to actually bring that up. I was going to bring that up and say I wouldn't mind at all, because look, I have friends who are Palestinian, and my heart goes out to them. And I hate to see what's happening in Gaza. To the innocent, Hamas, I wouldn't care if they fell off the fucking planet tomorrow. I have a bigger problem with the fact that while they're protesting for what's going on in Palestine, many of them are pro-Hamas, which I have a real problem for. Why not protest for stopping the war and returning the hostages?
I think that's a great way to sort of divert attention from what's happening, is to just call everything Hamas. That's a great way. When they blow up something and there's a bunch of children killed, they go, well, there might have been Hamas there. In the past, there was Hamas there. That used to be Hamas, but it's not now. And so these students are not pro-Hamas. They're pro-Palestine. They're none of them. Hamas is a, chauvinistic organization. And it was born out of, Netanyahu and cronies wanted an extreme organization that they wouldn't have to, come to the table with. It's much easier to just dismiss, the organization like Hamas than it is, the Palestinian Authority and such. So those are, there's plenty of documentation. Even, the former prime minister even said Netanyahu did a great job of, upping Hamas and giving them a bigger platform in an attempt to sort of fracture and splinter, the Palestinian resistance. They didn't want moderates that would come to the table. They wanted, unreasonable people like Hamas. Most people don't like Hamas. Most people that are pro-Palestine, I want them to, I want Palestinian people to have independence. I'm not pro-Hamas. I want,
But we're not talking about you. I was talking about these students, and you do see not only are these students pro-Hamas, at the same point in time, you'll find out that a lot of these students are also pro-Putin. I don't get it. I mean, there's always been radical ideas.
There's a weird...
One sec, Walter, one sec. There's always been radical ideas on college campuses. I understand that. Radical ideas are for the young. And some good things have come out of radical ideas, civil rights, right? But I don't understand when you have right now, there are still 130 hostages. Why not just group them all? How about everybody get along? Return the hostages and then stop the attacks and go after Hamas. I'm 100% all for that. But I don't understand now, on top of that, when you have Russia decimating Ukraine. And what about the number of dead people in Ukraine? I don't see these protests for the Ukrainian people. I personally think, and it's me personally, it's just anti-Jewish, it's anti-Semitism, and it's anti-Israel. That's what I think, unfortunately, is happening on too many of these college campuses.
There's a ton of people that are this, and I hate to use the word Zionist because it gets co-opted by the wrong people. Sometimes there are a lot of people that I call them apartheid enthusiasts, genocide deniers. That group of people, I don't conflate that with Judaism at all. I don't conflate that with you. Do you conflate that with Judaism? I don't think that's
no. I don't.
I don't conflate.
And I agree with you.
The government and actions of the government Israel with Judaism. Judaism goes back thousands of years. There's the thing. I did speak with someone who was working with the ICJ, the human civil rights lawyer, working with world courts and everything. And they were raised in the West Bank. Now, this is an interesting perspective because they said that this is how we're raised. When you have IDF soldiers coming to their house, she said the Arabic word for it is, open up, I'm Jewish. Okay? Now, this is important because you have someone that's raised and the only interactions they have with people that are Jewish are at the end of a gun, when their house is being raided, when their house is being marked. Once the IDF has come and they'll taken someone away, they'll mark their house with the Jewish star. And it's actually an important thing when they get 30s, 40s, much later in life, they meet someone that's quote anti-Zionist. They'll meet a Jewish person who's anti-Zionist, and it shatters their worldview. It shatters a lot of what they think. That people have published about this because it's a big deal to them. They're like, okay, I met someone that has shattered my view on what is Judaism, what is this, and that in itself will take time and education to separate those two things. Because I think what's really dangerous is the conflation of Judaism, anti-Semitism. I am sensitive about it. I've spent several years following people that use words like Soros and globalists.
And that's like Donald?
Yeah, it's a very clear dog whistle for Jew. We know what it means. I know what it means. When someone says globalist, when someone's saying, the bankers, the coastal elites, there's so many dog whistles. And a lot of these people fly under the radar because they support Israel. They go, well, and they unequivocally support Israel, and everyone just sort of, they go, oh, okay, well. And you have people that support Israel that, believe in these nonsensical, conspiracies. So, I'm sensitive enough to what is anti-Semitism. Personally, I don't like from the river to the sea.
What does that even mean?
There's
just tell
the
me
Jordan
what
River.
river, what
There's the
Yeah,
river, there's the Jordan River, there's the sea. Let me get a map
but
out?
the Jordan River doesn't run through Israel.
Okay, so I mean, I mean, what it is democracy for the people living, in the West Bank and for the people in Gaza. So, I mean, I personally, a lot of people, there's a split amongst people that are pro-Palestine. They're like, all right, you're just handing the ball to the other team. You're just giving people ammunition instead of focusing on the atrocities that are happening in Gaza right now. We can talk about some students on Columbia campus. We can talk about some people that say from the river to the sea. So that's personally why I don't like to use it. I don't like to say that because it just gets conflated. So that's that. I don't. And there's a ton of people that I've been to these protests. I've marched with Natura Kata. That's a Orthodox Jewish sect that is like, they brand themselves as anti-Zionist. And
they're also out of their fucking minds. But putting all that aside for a quick second, I just want to ask you, it's a question that I ask everybody when we're talking about this. It's not as if, look, I'm not going to talk about the conflict that's existed between Israel and Palestine or Israel and some of the neighboring. I just want to specifically talk about October 7th, right? This was an unprovoked event that took place. They grabbed hundreds, they killed thousands. So my question that I would
October
ask,
7th.
Wait.
Yeah.
The question that I would like to ask is, what's a reasonable response that Israel could or should have taken after an event like that, where you rape, you take hostage, you murder, you light babies on fire, you start executing people at will? What's a reasonable response? And what do you think that America would do if that shit happened at like Coachella or something like that? What would we be asking for as retaliation or in response?
Well, I mean, Governor Kathy Hochul said that. She's like, well, what if Buffalo was, what if was burned, but it was, and
she stole that line from me.
She was talking, I mean, the comical part is this did happen. The British, did burn, parts of the United States, and we went to war. We didn't go to war with the civilian population. We didn't do collective punishment. We didn't block aid. I mean, we're blocking aid trucks. We're, arguably targeting food, World Kitchen, workers that are coming in. And that's okay. The people on October 7th, the civilian population, those aren't enemy combatants, right?
Well, they're still in possession by Hamas.
Well, yeah, but those people that were taken hostage and killed, those are civilians. They're not enemy combatants. And if
agreed,
yeah. So if there's a war between Israel and another group of people, it should not be spilling into murdering civilians that aren't enemy combatants.
Totally agree. But we
could keep that same energy alive for the people of Gaza, because right now, anytime someone in Gaza dies, it's Hamas, and they're all under one big umbrella. Which I mean, enemy combatant for enemy combatant is a different conversation. When we're talking about, it's just, and this is also a territory
what would be a reasonable response?
What would be okay? But the difference is that you don't have. What is Gaza to you? Is what Gaza is that an independent nation to you?
Is it independent? Yeah, I think it's independent.
It's not independent. It's under control of Israel. Like Israelis don't go there and live, but it's under full control of Israel. It's not an independent state. It's not like Singapore. Or if it was a nation state against another nation state, then that's two nation states battling with each other.
But just answer the question if you can.
What's a normal response?
What would be a normal, or what would be a acceptable response?
An acceptable response. I mean, you want to go into geopolitical of like what going after the people that responsible for it, killing civilians and trying to starve everyone out.
I don't want to see a single civilian killed.
Yeah.
I really don't. Like I said, I was out for dinner the other day with a friend of mine. She's Palestinian, and we were having this conversation. It breaks my heart when I see a father or a mom holding a child who's bloodied, dead, or I see the bodies on the street. I don't want to see a single Palestinian, not a single civilian, right? Hamas, again, I could care less about them, right?
Well, Hamas, those are combatants.
They are combatants.
That took October 7th.
The problem, though, is that they are the worst enemy, as far as I'm concerned, to the Palestinian people, because they hide amongst them. They bunkered themselves in under schools, under hospitals. There's enough video proving that that's true. I mean, it's what do you think?
There's enough video showing. I think there's enough video. There's also a lot of stuff showing that anytime something gets bombed, it's just this. Well, that was Hamas. There was a Hamas there because Hamas, and that's worn a bit thin at this point with the amount of hospitals, the amount of civilian targets that have just been completely leveled. That is not, there was some argument to be made at some point, and then especially when you look at how targeted the IDF can be when they have a specific target in mind, and you see how precision guided they can be in those situations, to see them just wiping out the civilian population. I mean, there's videos upon videos of people just walking and getting 3 drone strikes. Just they were clearly unarmed. They were by themselves. And
I'm not going to say that there hasn't been mistakes.
At this point,
by the way, I'm not going to say that there hasn't been mistakes here.
After October 7th, there was a huge amount of goodwill amongst the entire world. Most of the world was on the side of Israel. This had just happened. The amount of goodwill they had after that was very high. And to have eaten that up at this point means there's so much that has had to happen before most people that were originally on their side to go, all right, this is too much. I mean,
I'm not so sure about that. I think you're quantifying a number that I don't understand.
I mean,
even after October 7th. Even after October 7th, let me be very clear about this. Anti-Semitism was still on the rise. But let me move on and just check this.
Wait.
We're definitely not going to agree.
Anti-Semitism has never gone anywhere. That has always been up there. We don't teach people about capitalism. So the conspiracy theory that our money would be distributed evenly if it wasn't for the Jews is this rampant conspiracy theory. It's pervasive throughout just everywhere. And that is, I don't want to say I don't want to minimize anti-Semitism. I want to say you see it everywhere. It has never went anywhere. Personally, Jews have always been in danger and have been singled out. To say that went up right after October 7th. I also take issue with criticizing Israel and anti-Semitism.
Experienced it. What do you mean, Walter? I experienced it. I'm walking in the streets right after October 7th. There were a bunch of posters put up. I took a video of this fucking bitch ripping the faces off of the babies that they said, return the hostages. These were all under 10 years of age. She's ripping the faces off these posters. I call that anti-Semitism. But let me move on and ask you this. I wanted to ask you, are schools like Columbia right for releasing the students early to finish the semester remotely? Or you think that they should allow these protests to continue despite the risks to students, especially the Jewish students?
So, I mean, listen, a lot of these, there might have been individual cases where someone was being harassed and on their way to class and they were literally just existing. There's a lot of cases that I've seen where you look at a full video of something and it's someone being openly antagonistic, and then multiple protesters come at them and run at them. I mean, Columbia is historically not even a great school in terms of like protecting, sexual assault victims and going after rapists that are on campus. So, I mean, I don't really, put a lot of faith in them to make the right call on a lot of these things. I feels like they've done a lot of work to shut down the protests and everything. I mean, there's a genocide happening. People, we want to talk about the substance of a Columbia protest or, an NYU, Yale, Vanderbilt protest. I mean, protests are meant to be disruptive. They're meant to, everyone's supposed to be inconvenienced by a protest.
Okay, when you say everybody, I'm talking about like especially the Jewish students are being targeted by a much larger swath of individuals that are attending the school. And
most of the people that are in those protests are Jewish. There's a strong amount of people that are Jewish are the protesters. I mean, it's sort of this whole thing of like, everything that
I can assure you that I can assure you one thing, that the Jewish students who are protesting, and good for them, they have every right to express their belief. And I too feel horrible. And I would like to see this this Israel-Palestinian conflict, this war. I would like to see it end.
And also,
I'd also like to see the hostages return. But you're not seeing Jewish students attacking other Jewish students.
If Jewish students, if pro-Israel, genocide denying students want to protest, I believe they have the right to do that without physical harm. They have the right to do that without getting suspended, expelled from school. They have a right to do that without, outside organizations working to dox them. They have a right to do that without the major donors of the schools threatening to pull subsidies and funding.
Why?
And
Why?
everything. What are you talking about? The pro-Israel students have a right to do all that.
Why should donors not have the right within which to put their money, it belongs to them, to put their money behind causes that they agree with? And if they don't agree with the way that Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, Vanderbilt, NYU, if they don't like where the school is going, whether it's pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, pro-England, it makes no difference. If they don't like where the money is going, they have every right not to donate. I mean, donate just means
it's the free market. It's the free market. I just don't want them to. I don't want there to be like this undue influence. I mean, we've seen this before with the Koch brothers and how they've, effectively shut down and, done this. Christopher Rufo, and you have people on the far right that love this. They love, because they're like, oh, this is part of their thing to, dismantle higher education. They love this. They love the fact that they can jump on this movement, which will get enough people that normally wouldn't be, down with the far right in dismantling higher education. This is an amazing opportunity for them. Christopher Rufo has explicitly said this in interview upon interview, and he said, look up his Hillsdale College. He gave a famous speech at Hillsdale College where he explicitly talked about dismantling higher education, public education, and he has jumped on this opportunity. I have two just questions, just to follow up onto it. I just want to ask you this one because you're out there. I love when you troll, these folks and you start doing your shtick. But my question really to you is, when, in your opinion, does free speech cross the line into anti-Semitism? Because you're seeing the banners. So my podcast,
you are seeing the banners, right?
My podcast.
Of course.
We are not journalists. Okay. My new episode, we go over that. There's very explicit cases of this. These are, the best example, the easiest one, ground ball is when Alex Jones tweeted that Hitler was bad. He just did this last week, right? Go to the replies, and those people are saying, well, actually Hitler tried to, bring peace to Europe, and he was actually the one who didn't want to go to war, and all of this alternative history. These same people and groups are vying and using, First Amendment rights to try and spew this nonsense on college campuses, right? So these people are trying to come to college campuses and throw doubt as to, the Holocaust. I mean, did it really happen?
Trump did it. Trump said the same sort of stupid thing.
Yeah. Okay. And we have to, there's the amount of disinformation that, around that is insane. Thanks, Elon Musk. And, so it's in the realm of free speech. I personally think, all right, if someone's saying something I don't like, I have the right to curse you out and, tell you where to stick it, where to shove it. Then we can have a free speech. I think people that are, conservative, claim to be, big First Amendment people. A lot of them, same time will, turn around and say, oh, the cops need to shut down this Columbia stuff and, kick out and expel all these people. There's the Poppers. What's the Poppers principle, where it's like, when you need to be intolerant towards intolerance. If someone's breaking the social contract of intolerance, then the laws of, the rights and laws that we all get afforded doesn't apply to them. You and I are going to have different opinions on what an anti-Semitism is. You're Jewish. I'm not. And I'm willing to accept those differences. I don't think challenging the state of Israel and the actions of the government is anti-Semitic. You have people that live in Israel. They're, second, third generation at this point. They have as much of a right to be there, as the next person. You also have, people historically, like, from Gaza, West Bank, and they also have a right to be there and exist and have, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
I guess so do the Native Americans in this country. But let me ask you this, my final question.
Yeah,
on this
no,
topic,
you're doing great.
Why can't people support Israel, but just not Netanyahu? Because, like what you were saying, Israelis don't like this war. They don't like Netanyahu's policies, and they certainly don't like his genocide. But other than protesting,
it's genocide.
What can they do?
Michael,
what can they do?
I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for saying that it is genocide. I do appreciate that. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being dead serious. For you to say that.
I am not a fan. I am not a fan of Netanyahu.
No, but you agree that it's a genocide.
I think he needs. I do. Netanyahu's policy. I believe Netanyahu's policy, like many others, is genocide.
And he's keeping this up. He's keeping all of this up. Otherwise, he's going to get kicked out for, because most of Israel puts.
But here's
that
the second part, and the more important part of this. Even though that Israel has shitty leadership, Israel and the Jewish people have a right to exist. So how do you balance the two? It's either, right? It's either, I hate to say it, Netanyahu's position is like kill or be killed. I don't agree with it. That's what he's saying.
My producing partner for We Are Not Journalists, he and I go back and forth on this. He's Jewish. He's more of like, oh, well, we just need an administrative change. He hates Netanyahu. He thinks that he's, perpetuating this violence and this genocide so that he can stay in power and push the rest of Israel, to the far right. So, and, I think that you get someone who's more of a moderate in there and they'll still have the same practices. My thing is, these places like the West Bank and Gaza should be independent and have like independent agency, not be under the banner and thumb of the Israeli government. I mean, if that were to continue, it would be. I mean, if you wanted to argue in that, you'd be arguing for a one-state solution where we're not, giving out right of return to everyone, right of return and, this, being, yeah, that whole thing. I don't, my producing partner and co-host of We're Not Journalists is Jewish, and we go back and forth about this all the time. And stuff.
I agree with him. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu. I think he's very similar to Donald in that same position that
and he
they want
wants
to be
Trump to win.
far right.
He wants Donald Trump to win. I don't understand why Biden is just bowing to Netanyahu when at the end of the day, Netanyahu would love if Trump won.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm going to move away from the topic. What's the latest on your gal pals, Moms for Liberty? Because I hear that you spoke at New York City School Board meeting not too long ago. First of all, tell us about what that meeting was like and how did it go?
Okay, so District 2 in Manhattan, it is one of the largest, historically most progressive, affluent districts, in New York, possibly the country. And it's very prestigious. And 2 board members got on there that are Moms for Liberty. And they're explicitly Moms for Liberty. I've went to Moms for Liberty events where they are the keynote speakers. So they could not be any more Moms for Liberty than that.
Tell my audience who don't know what Moms for Liberty is.
Moms for Liberty, aka Moms Against Literacy, is they came to power during the pandemic when they, went to all these school board meetings and were anti-COVID, anti-mask, anti-vaccine. It was under the guise of parental rights, all that. They've since become a group that is working very hard to destroy public education. They have explicitly, from the leaders to the rank and file, they're against empathy. They're against teaching empathy in schools. They're the ones that are always trying to ban books. They're using the whole gender ideology thing to sow doubt and division and using that to demonize LGBTQ students. Let me see. I could keep going on. And yeah, they are organized, and they had a big convention last summer back in Philadelphia, and it wasn't a big, flag waving MAGA rally. It was about how you can organize in your own community. They're getting everyone to run for school board in their own community and the smallest levels of government, and raise hell.
Now tell me how it went. What did you do, and how did that go over?
I went up there and I talked about how my son was. So I went to the Moms for Liberty meeting. So I went to the school board meeting. You could call it a Moms for Liberty meeting. School board meeting for District 2, where there are multiple Moms for Liberty board members. And I gave a speech about how my son was held down and forced to apologize for being white, and apologize for being straight, and apologize for slavery. And then informed everyone that I actually don't have a son, but, as a conservative, I lay awake at night, really scared, that what if I did have a son and, this happened to him in school. So, as a conservative, you have to be worried about problems that are sort of made up and imaginary. That's a key to it. So I did that. I spoke there, and this was about they're trying to ban trans students from competing in sports, and this is like K through 12, and to have a conversation about parameters that you want to put, like, oh, is someone taking blockers, the hormone, how long have they been in transition, right? That reasonable conversations to have with regards to trans students competing. I wouldn't enter into a good faith conversation. I wouldn't assume they're having a good faith conversation, because this is being done by Moms for Liberty members. I've listened to them speak at other events. They're awful. Maud Marin is the most notorious. She's the sponsor of this bill. I've watched her at other meetings say, oh, there's a queer student in my school, and I guess queer means you just can't get a boyfriend. She's talking about her own students in her own school. Like, that's an awful way to speak as an educator, someone who works in education. You should not be
I
working.
mean, what do you think ends up happening? So that student gets the shit kicked out of them. And why not? Because if you think about it, it's being condoned by the adult who's actually running the school. I mean, I find it, like you do, I find it just disgraceful. And I think Moms for Liberty and those who ascribe to it should never be on, forget about a school board. They shouldn't even be on, a buildings board. To say the least. I really don't. But I also hear that you're now taking on sex traffickers. I mean, how do you troll the sex traffickers? And my real question, when I heard that you were doing that, why did you choose to branch out this way? What prompted it?
Was it me going after sex traffickers? Which video are you referring to? The one where
I don't know. There's more than one.
This is one where I dress up as MAGA, and anyone who disagrees with me, I call them a sex trafficker. And
so what is it? What is it about this whole concept and branching out this way? What spurred this?
It was this whole thing of like, they sort of misrepresent the movement, MAGA and this whole border, panic. They talk about, well, there's sex trafficking happening. It's sex trafficking, and you're talking about a situation that would be exacerbated by shutting down the border. If you made the only access into America through, coyotes, if you made that the only access into America, of course you're just handing power to the cartels and people who are into sex trafficking. So, I went up to, people at MAGA rallies, I would talk to them about this, and I would say, like, how have you been personally affected by the border crisis? There's this video of me saying this to multiple people, and none of them have been personally affected by what's going on at the border. It's all like hearsay, and just like, it's happening here, it's happening there. So it was part of like the whole sex trafficking thing was like part of a larger conversation, because in the same breath, the MAGA people will demonize immigrants and migrants and illegals, and at the same breath express sympathy for those that are victims of sex trafficking. And I'm just going, you know what? You don't get both. You can't, demonize a whole group of people and then, be like, oh, it's terrible what's happening to them with regards to sex trafficking.
Yeah, except for the fact that, I hate to say it, too many of the MAGAs are actually the ones that seem to be involved in that.
The pastors, the pastors, the cops.
I guess not just the pastors. There are members of Congress, who have been, charged with transporting underage girls over state lines for sexual purpose. So on.
Yeah, we don't know who that is at all. Yeah, what congressman are you even talking about?
I won't mention his name, but let me move on and then just ask you this, because I'm sure, right, being that you're one of these guys that goes to so many of these events, I'm sure that you've noticed that Trump's crowds are getting noticeably smaller, especially the one that's taking place now around federal buildings and places where they might be arrested for doing something illegal. But do you think that Trump's charm is wearing thin, or are MAGAs more committed to the cult than ever? What's your opinion on that?
I think it's more of they might have, a lot of people are saying, hey, Trump is just a funny man who talks funny. However, they've been so radicalized against Biden, and there's all these conspiracies floating around about, they think that, Biden's intentionally letting immigrants in order to, sway the election. So it sort of overrides however they might feel about Trump, because they've been demonized, they've been radicalized into thinking that Biden is intentionally letting immigrants in because they're all going to get voter ID cards and be allowed to vote in the next election, or things like that. And they think that it's all like part of this, World Economic Forum CCP plan that everyone, trans kids, that's all Biden, right? The border. Keep going. What's the next one? There's the border, Biden, abortion, all of this stuff, and it's to bring down our country. DEI, right? Like all of these things have just been demonized to the point where I think you probably risk getting people that were sort of in the middle, or people that might have voted for Biden in the last election.
But do you think that maybe Trump's charm is wearing thin? Do you think that maybe they're sort of just sick of the same old act? I mean, because that's really what it is. Every single rally is basically become a rambling sort of whine fest. Wah, wah. The Biden administration is weaponizing things against me. Your favorite president. And everybody's sitting there and they're like, yeah, I know. We heard that before. Sort of like, fucking tell us something new.
I would, God, I would love corroboration that was for that being like the case. Because I was talking to some MAGA person. They were like telling me about how many rallies they've been to. And I'd be like, listen, I've probably been to as many as you. I've traveled the country. I've probably heard him speak as many times as you. And I've never not been tired of it. It's always been like, it sounded like this incoherent rambling, like people that make fun of how Biden is old and has a speech impediment. They don't notice the fact that Trump just goes off and goes nowhere with what he's saying. I mean,
well, then on top of that, I think you even filmed it. There were people just midway through the when they
left, they walked out,
and they just start leaving. It's almost like been there, heard it. How many times can you watch Roadhouse? Right? How many times can you watch Top Gun? Right? Roadhouse. I mean, it's like after the 30th time, then maybe you get a phone call, so you take the phone call. You're not worried about the movie. Why? Because you've seen it. Dirty Dancing. How many times have you seen these movies that if you end up getting up to go make yourself
you're mentioning good movies, though. You mentioned you got to mention it's more like The Room or something.
I get it. Well, The Room you wouldn't have seen, but The Room you wouldn't even have seen. From start to finish. It's like Roadhouse, for example, is on all the time. Right? I mean, it's like it's on all the time. And in the middle, you turn around, you're like, you know what? I got a phone call. I got to go call my mom. I got to call my dad. I got to go make myself a sandwich, whatever it is. So you pick yourself up and you come back because you already know the story. That's the point. They already know what he's going to say. And you're right. It's rambling stupidity over and over and over again. And they're picking themselves up and they're leaving. And it's not like, leaving in the fifth inning of, the World Series here, right? When it's a tie game, 2-2. I mean, they just get up because they're like, I don't give a shit.
I honestly wish more people in the MAGA movement understood what Trump actually stands for and the policies that he actually wants. Because when I speak to some people, it is very tragic where there's certain things that they want. And I think, wow, we can really connect. And I appreciate this for you. I appreciate that you said this. And I'm like, but you're at a Trump rally. Trump does not want that, right? When this one guy, he was talking about income tax and him and his family pay too much, reasonable complaint. And he saw, we were talking about billionaires paying, no taxes. And I could go into the fact that Trump made sure that billionaires don't pay taxes. That was a big piece of legislation that he got done. But it's like, what is that going to do? It's like he's at the Trump rally. He's swallowed the whole thing. And
I want to, since you brought that up, that's kind of like sparked a question that I have for you. Because obviously, this is not your first time here on Mea Culpa, and I've watched your work evolve over time. You're not just interviewing folks anymore. Like when you first started out, you're more of an actor or a performance artist. That's the way I see your new videos. And you get right in the mix of it with your subject, like what you're talking about with this guy. 100% correct. I saw that video and I couldn't believe it myself. Yes, taxes are too high. I get it. When you turn around and you threw at him that billionaires pay zero, that you pay more in taxes than they do, and that it's the leader, the Führer, the monarch, the MAGA leader, who's the one that passed this legislation. All of a sudden, he didn't know what to say. So my question to you is, how did that come about? I mean, and is it more satisfying to you to sort of get into it with them as almost like a performance artist?
It is. It's like it came about because I speak to people a lot. I speak to people I don't agree with a lot, and I speak to them. I really don't like to like come in as a debate because I feel like that changes a conversation. You know, if I come in as someone that I'm agreeing with them, people tend to say a lot more, right? So like it is when I talk to people and I don't use words that are part of the culture wars and describe things in ways that aren't part of the culture wars, most people sound very agreeable. They say like, oh, well, you know, yeah, like billionaires, like what the hell? Like how come they're not paying taxes? Let's change the tax code to go after them. Because, you know, but, you know, if I went into how, you know, the IRS is being weaponized and, you know, they're all getting ammunition, they're going to come to your house and shoot you, you know, then they'd all start frothing at the mouth, right? So it's when you mention socialism, when you talk about, you know, everyone, you know, the workers having power and rights and equity in a company, you know, it's a different conversation versus unions and, you know, the left and, you know, socialism, communism. You know, it's you get people that are generally more agreeable, which can be refreshing. And then sometimes when you get back into like, you know, present day with them, they go back to be like frothing at the mouth about it. So it's nice to like feel like you're talking to a human being for 2 to 3 seconds, right? You're like, oh, okay, there's someone behind here. And then they go back to, you know, this election was stolen, you know, Dominion crazy pants stuff.
Yeah. So let me ask you then, do you see much of a difference between the old school Trumpers, like when you first started, and the new school maggots? I mean, you think that QAnon and some of those super crazy conspiracy groups have disbanded, or have they just gone underground?
They're mainstream thanks to Elon Musk. They're mainstream. I mean, the craziest conspiracy that would have been totally fringe. You go on X and Elon Musk, if he's not directly pushing it, he's pushing an account that deals in all of this, you know, overt racism and, you know, conspiracy, you know, COVID variants, anti-vax, just everything. It's like, what conspiracy hasn't he pushed at this point from his own account, from his own personal account? I think it's gotten worse than what I saw a few years ago. Way worse. It's become normalized.
Yeah. And the worst is that on this Twitter X platform, the amount of bots that are there, it's really terrible because the bots are so good now that, and of course it just means that you have to spend a lot of time blocking them, right? Not responding and so on. You know which ones they are there. How come every single Second Amendment, former veteran, they all look the same? They either have the long beard and mustache or a goatee. They're all
blue
bald.
checks,
They're all wearing
the
whole bit, right? They're all bots. They have 53 followers. They've been doing this since 2007. You know, the whole thing is so absolutely crazy. And Elon Musk promised me when I spoke to him on this on Twitter before, when he literally just bought Twitter. I was a speaker in one of these town halls, And I asked him the straight up question, what are you going to do to control bots in order that they don't destroy this platform so that there could be fair and reasonable dialogue? You cannot have reasonable dialogue with a bot because you turn around and you write, I think X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden they turn around and it responds back something like, you're a racist, you are, X. It's just something completely. You're a child molester.
You're being anti-racist.
Right. It's really it's disgusting and it's ruining.
And let me tell you something about Twitter.
Like,
the funny thing is like as a creator, so before Elon bought Twitter actually was very good about like not taking down certain videos, like, or not certain videos, most videos. The stuff you could post on there was a wide array of things you could post in there. You couldn't post direct disinformation that might be harmful to public health. But you could dance around that subject a lot, but you couldn't be like overtly, you couldn't overtly subvert public health. And I remember like all my videos were getting banned at a certain point because the algorithm on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok would, think that I was MAGA, right? They'd see my content, they'd see the flags, the Confederate flags. They go, oh, all right, alt-right stuff, and it would get banned and taken down on all platforms except Twitter. I told every creator I know that did like political TikTok, I said, start posting on Twitter. It's amazing. Nothing gets taken down. I had to do so much work to get banned on Twitter. I got banned one time and it was really nervous. It was right after I got my blue check, when blue checks meant something. I changed my name to Donald Trump Jr. and I changed my profile picture and I started tweeting as Donald Trump Jr. And I was banned like within, took a few minutes, but those few minutes they were glorious. Like everyone was like, wait, what? Because I started talking about how Letitia James has subpoenaed me and, good luck. I don't remember anything with all the crack cocaine I do. And everyone was like, wait, what? Trump Jr. said what just now? And I was like wholesale banned. But I mean, that took work.
Yeah. Well, congrats. Congrats.
That took work. I got my account back, at the time, but it was, and when people talk about, oh, you're getting banned on Twitter, like I think it was just manufactured nonsense. Basically, like, the alt-right didn't have a front page platform like they do now to spew their nonsense, and they were pissy about it.
Hey, let me ask you this then, because you've done some really excellent anti-abortion trolling.
Yeah.
But when you're marching with these guys, what do they tell you about women? I mean, what's the point of men being pro-life, but not losing any rights like women do? And because it seems to me like everyone should suffer, not just the ladies.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
what do they say to you?
I mean, it's like they'll always be like, oh, we don't hate women. What are you talking about? We love women. And they're the baby makers. I have that on tape where it's just like, hey, they're the ones that make the children, and which is a weird thing to put them in the weird pedestal to put them on. And at the same time, these same people want to, if you talk to them long enough, they're mad about no-fault divorce. They want to get rid of no-fault divorce. So it's abortion, no-fault divorce. Those two things they want to do away with because, the sanctity of marriage and blah, 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 the nuclear family. And somehow, if you want to talk about what's really killing the nuclear family, it's, it's capitalism. It's, the fact that no one can afford a house and afford to, get married and live. There's nothing to do with, it's not the left is like, no, screw the nuclear family. It's comical to me.
I mean, yeah, I think some of these guys, I've seen in some of the videos, one guy was like, yeah, I mean, it should be my decision. And the only decision that my wife should be making is what she's cooking me for dinner when I get home.
Yeah, and the same people want to get rid of the 19th Amendment. You remember,
Yeah,
you see that? Where like these people
I
were like,
did.
this country went downhill, when, after the 19th Amendment, which I didn't think we would be. I think the difference now with the whole MAGA movement now versus a few years ago is there was a lot of dog whistles and ways that people would sort of dance around saying certain things. And I think now it's been more mask off.
Mhm.
And I think if we
Yeah.
didn't have all this geopolitical unrest, people would be more
And they
focused.
bullshit. They would find something else to complain about. Everybody wants to find a topic that they could all
Well, no, but
coalesce
there'd be
around
more
and
focus on it. Like right now,
maybe.
because no one's paying attention to Trump at certain points, he gets on and talks about how immigrants are poisoning the blood of this country, which is he wouldn't have said that
Hitler.
4 years ago.
Hitler said it. You know what? Let me ask you this then, because I've heard that for a lot of these right-wing states that they're gearing up for Donald to hopefully retake office so that they can start to introduce some of their initiatives like segregation on buses and at drinking fountains and in restaurants. Did you hear this as well? I mean, this is crazy shit. Do the young people in these southern states want this bullshit? I mean, do they really think that this is a winning strategy to bring Gen Zers in? And I don't care if the Gen Zers are Republican, especially the female Gen Zers.
I think most of the MAGA movement does not know what the MAGA movement stands for. My personal belief. There's a lot of people that I speak to that would go, "Oh, and of course not. Segregation, that's terrible." And they would, but the bill that will, bring about segregation is like an anti-DEI bill. And they'll go, "Oh, of course, yes. We got to get rid of DEI and affirmative action and ESG and all of those." And so that's how you get them to vote for it. These same people that do not want segregation they see a bill to ban DEI and all of that, they go, "Oh my God, we have to support it." Meanwhile, that bill also, would let a business discriminate against whoever they want. Like a business could just deny someone service for reasons they make up on their own, right? Like certain black people can come here, certain, something. So it's right. And it'll be like packaged in a way where it's like, "Oh, well, I'm a business owner. I should be able to serve whoever I want. I don't, if I don't want to make a cake for a gay couple, I don't need to have to do that. I shouldn't be forced by the federal government to do it." And it sounds nice to MAGA, right?
Fuck the federal government. Yeah. I don't want a gay couple eating my cake.
Yeah.
I mean,
but by the way, that case that got decided by the Supreme Court, remember the gay wedding? Like the woman didn't want to she was like, "I don't want to be forced to make a."
It was against what she claimed is that it was against her religious belief.
Yeah. But the best part about it, the part that like made me lose my mind, this person was not in business. She did not make websites. Look up this person's website. You will lose your mind. I don't care. Like you're not a professional website designer. You will look at this woman's page and go, "Okay, no. This woman, she was hypothetically going to get into the business of website design, and hypothetically got anxiety over the fact of the possibility of doing a website for a gay person." That was the entire thing. She has never designed a website. I defy anyone, to find me like an actual client or website she's actually done for money. So it was all like made up and manufactured. That drove me over the edge.
So look, the hour goes by. I understand. The hour goes by very quickly here on Mea Culpa. My final question for you. Yeah. How do you see the election going? What's your prediction?
I'm really scared about the election. I'm very, progressive. You call me far left and everything. And, you have a lot of people that don't want to support Biden because of, recent actions. And sometimes the Democrats don't really help in that regard. The Democratic Party has not been very helpful in assuaging those things. We both call it a genocide, but, you were both on opposite sides of this issue. That's going to be an issue that keeps people from the polls. I hate it. I've been trying to explain to people, but like, listen, whatever you feel about Biden, I have been on the campaign trail for the last few years. I have traveled the country. I've listened to so many different politicians speak. I've been at rallies, not just MAGA rallies. And, they're like, because they're like, oh, well, how could the Republican Party be any worse? And my response is they could be a lot worse. Like, I know this because I've traveled the country and I've listened to them talk, right? Like, people are upset that Biden hasn't done enough for climate change. Yet you have the Republicans that don't believe in climate change, and they think that Biden hasn't drilled enough.
Despite the fact that we've produced more oil and we've now sent more oil into the marketplace than ever before. I disagree. So let's leave the show in terms of disagreeing on the very first topic, and we'll disagree on the last. I see this as going to be a massive blue tidal wave. While I agree with you that there are portions of the country that are angry at Biden because of a specific issue, very much like the way Trump beat Hillary Clinton, people don't want him. As much as they enjoy the stupidity and the sort of reality TV show that comes around with him, I don't see him able to, not a guy who's twice impeached, 4 times indicted, sexual assaulting, takes credit for Roe versus Wade, right? And so that, which affects every single woman in this country and the men who love them, right? Or the women who love them, right? It's, I don't see that this is even going to be a close race. I believe that people, whether you
I hope so.
Hold your nose.
Really hope so.
Maybe you hold your nose and you vote for Biden simply because the prospect of Donald Trump, a guy who's also said that day one he wants to be a dictator, wants to rewrite the Constitution, wants to strip the executive and the legislative branches of their power,
and the Board of Education, dismantle the Board of Education,
all of it. I mean, I just don't see people. And I see the way that the polls are now, and I'm not a fan of the polls. I don't believe them, but I do see more and more response to Joe Biden these days. So I think it's going to be a massive, massive victory. And I think that victory will also ultimately put an end to MAGA. So we'll see who's right.
No, I would love it. I mean, the one thing that I think Democrats really hamstrung themselves recently, which is voting to ban TikTok. That has been one of the best platforms to go against disinformation.
I'm a TikToker.
What?
I'm a TikToker.
Yeah, I'm a TikToker. I mean, the irony is that I became famous years ago with my video where I was, pushing back on Trump for his TikTok ban during 2020. And I think I was like, here we are now with Democrats voting to ban TikTok. And I was like, this is the best way to mobilize Gen Z to the polls. It's been an amazing tool for mobilizing. It's really good. It's been phenomenal in a lot of ways, but it's also politically inconvenient to the powers that be. So
agreed. Well, great to see you again, my friend.
Yeah. And just to everyone, safe. Go to We Are Not Journalists. I just have a whole thing. I have a new episode dropping where I discuss in depth a lot of the stuff that Michael and I were just talking about. So,
well, you'll be well, my friend, and I will definitely see you soon. We'll see who is right.
All right. Thank you, Michael.